Nathan Hall peered through the rain-streaked window of the Maplewood Inn, watching as storm clouds swept in over the distant hills. Thunder rumbled, and bright lances of lightning split the sky, momentarily illuminating the small parking lot outside. He was alone in the unloved corner of the lounge, a place he had chosen because no one bothered him there. Indeed, no one usually bothered him at all. The dull light of a table lamp turned the pages of his notebook a faint yellow, and though the words lay open in front of him, they refused to properly assemble themselves on the page. He sighed, brushing a lock of dark hair from his eyes. He had come to Maplewood with only one intention: to find solitude and maybe, just maybe, rediscover the spark of inspiration for his next novel. Though he'd garnered some acclaim for his previous works, he felt it had come at a cost. Solitude had become a sanctuary he almost feared to leave behind. He liked the inn's hushed hallways and time-worn charm, the isolation offered by the small lake beyond it, and even the faded wallpaper that told of a different era. In his mind, it was a place well suited to a recluse. Across the lounge, the main entrance opened, letting in a gust of wind and the scent of damp earth. A slender figure hurried through the door, a woman in a burgundy coat flecked with droplets of rain. He watched as she flung back the hood, revealing a cascade of auburn curls. There was an air of drama about her, something in the way she spoke to the inn's owner, Miss Richards, at the front desk. She smiled widely, excitement brightening her face in the warm light. She spoke with eloquence, even in those few words he picked up. Nathan, in a gesture of curiosity quite unlike him, leaned forward to catch a glimpse of her expression. That night, the lounge was all but empty, containing only him and a middle-aged couple sipping tea. The newcomer finished her chat with Ms. Richards, secured a room key, and turned to take in the space. Her discerning gaze flicked over the lounge's scarred wooden tables, the vintage wallpaper, and finally settled on Nathan. He jerked his eyes back to his notebook. Time passed, he wasn't sure how long, lost as he was in the labyrinth of half-formed sentences, before the soft tap of footsteps sounded near him. "Forgive me," she said gently. "Do you mind if I sit?" Nathan looked up, startled. She gestured at the leather armchair across from him. The glow from his table lamp made her auburn curls shimmer, and up close, her presence seemed even more striking. Despite the disarray of her coat, there was confidence in her eyes, as though she was used to making an impression. He swallowed, trying to push away the unease of conversation, yet some polite corner of his conscience compelled him to nod. "Sure, I don't own this corner. Please?" She flashed him a grateful smile, slipped out of her coat, and took a seat. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Evelyn." He paused momentarily, uncertain about whether he should reciprocate with an introduction or feign absorption in the open pages of his manuscript. Eventually he relented. "Nathan," he said, "Nathan Hall." Her eyes lit up. "The novelist?" Nathan's heart hammered a little harder. He was never sure if he liked being recognized. "You've read my work? I'm whew, surprised." Evelyn laughed, and her voice seemed to carry something theatrical, even in such a hushed space. "I'm part of a traveling theater troupe, and on the road, good reading is everything. I read your last novel, Field of Longing, between shows. Your writing is, well, it's a gift. It stayed with me." A mix of gratitude and discomfort warmed his cheeks. He never knew how to respond to admirers of his work, let alone a traveler with such vivacity. "Thank you," he said carefully. "I appreciate that." A crack of thunder shook the walls, and they both glanced up at the overhead lights, which flickered precariously. Then Evelyn turned her attention back to him, eyes filled with a certain curiosity. "You look like a man with something on his mind," she said. "If I may ask, is everything all right?" Nathan deliberated for a moment. "I'm working on something new, or at least I'm trying to. A novel, but the words won't come." Evelyn tapped her chin with a thoughtful expression. "We have that in common, then, the act of creation, I mean. When I'm on stage, if I don't have the right motivation or the right chemistry with the setting, I can't convey my character's emotions properly. Could writer's block be something like that? A missing spark or a misalignment with your story? He gave a slight nod. Yes, that's exactly how it feels. I can't hear the character speaking anymore. He swallowed again, momentarily stunned by the ease with which he was speaking to this stranger. Something about her presence, an openness, a lack of judgment, invited him to share more than he usually shared with people who'd known him for years. Travel inspires me, she said softly. Experiencing new places, meeting new people, maybe a change of perspective could help you. Her eyes wandered over the lounge, as though to include the entire inn in the notion. He sipped from a cup of lukewarm tea he'd barely touched all evening. Maybe. I came here to free myself from distractions, but now the silence presses in like a weight. I might have inadvertently isolated myself even more. Evelyn smoothed her skirts, stylish but rumpled from travel, and nodded in understanding. I think there's a balance between quiet and activity. Too much quiet, and a person folds in on themselves. Too little, and we can't collect our thoughts. A short silence settled between them. Another rumble of thunder bounced off the walls, and the lights dimmed again, as though warning that the power might not hold for much longer. You're with a theater troupe? Nathan asked, shifting the conversation away from himself. What brings you to Maplewood? She grinned, her expression brightening. It's a short detour. My upcoming production will be staged in the neighboring town of Windshire, and from what my friends say, it's an old amphitheater with a beautiful open-air design, but we ended up here for a night because of the storm. The roads are too slick for the bus. Her eyes held a flicker of excitement mingled with a bit of fatigue. Nathan noticed her posture seemed tired, perhaps from performing or constant travel. Do you enjoy it? He asked. Edith Lean's smile widened. I love it. The stage is a world unto itself, filled with endless possibilities, laughter, tears, raw emotion. It's a place to bring stories to life, and that gives me a kind of energy I can't find anywhere else. Nathan sat up straighter, a light of admiration in his gaze. I guess that's why I write, to let stories breathe in the reader's mind. His voice dropped a little. But sometimes it feels like the page is empty, not just because the words are missing, but because I'm missing something. Something that can't be put into words. Her gaze softened. And maybe it's something you'll find off the page or in someone else's story. A boom of thunder made Evelyn jump, and the lights in the lounge flickered harder, then went out. Within this sudden darkness, a taut silence took hold. Ms. Richards gave a soft exclamation from the hallway, and somewhere someone fumbled with a flashlight. Evelyn chuckled nervously. Looks like we'll have to wait out the storm in the dark. Nathan tapped the table, reflexively seeking reassurance in the sturdy wood beneath his fingertips. I hope the power returns soon. Gradually, Miss Richards moved through the lounge, lighting tall candles and glass holders on each table. Their glow illuminated the small space, casting dancing shadows along the wallpaper. With warm candlelight washing over them, Evelyn drew in a contemplative breath and spoke quietly. Did you ever hear about the traveling actress who ran from her own secrets, but found them again in every stage role she played? Intrigued by her words and the gentle flickering of candlelight on her face, Nathan studied her expression. You sound like you're describing yourself, he ventured. She gave him a whimsical smile. We all carry stories we rarely share, yes? In my case, performing helps me be someone else, if only for the length of a show. Nathan nodded, the candlelight causing a russet gleam in his eyes. Tell me about it, he said, then added, almost as an afterthought, only if you wish. He half expected her to politely decline. Instead, she gave him a measured look, then set her hands in her lap. I haven't always been a traveling actress. There was a time I wanted nothing more than to stay at home. I grew up in a household that believed in stability, same town, same neighborhood, generation after generation. I joined drama classes in high school and discovered I had a passion for it, but my family insisted on practicality. A wave of memory seemed to pass over her. I tried to follow that path, to go to college for something more traditional, but the moment I stepped on stage for my first real role, it felt like unlocking a door. Left college, joined a small local troupe and then a bigger one. I haven't looked back, except I do at times think of how my mother worried I might never find a stable life. I guess that's one reason I'm always in motion. I'm still proving to myself that my choice wasn't a mistake. Softly, Nathan asked, "Do you regret it? Any of it?" She shook her head. No, not exactly. It has its challenges, though. Always being on the move means I get glimpses into other people's lives, but it's not often I'm in one place long enough to really belong. Nathan felt a pang of empathy. I know the feeling. You see, I love stories because they let me observe countless lives from a vantage point. I can withdraw, remain behind the curtain. It's safer that way. But then, after a while, it's lonely too. They shared a somber moment in the low glow, each separated from the other by a small table, yet feeling closer than two strangers ought to in such a short span. The warm hush of candlelight and the distant roar of rain on the rooftop sketched a comforting cocoon around them. Evelyn's eyes flicked to his open notebook on the table. Is that your current manuscript? He stared at the partially filled pages with a rueful smile. It's more a graveyard of half realized ideas right now. I can't seem to settle on something. She reached for a pen lying beside the notebook. May I? Nathan hesitated for a moment, then nodded, intrigued to see what she would do. Evelyn lifted the pen and carefully wrote a single sentence beneath his scrawled notes. She leaned back, letting him read it. Sometimes a stranger's voice becomes the guiding star in a midnight of lost words. A bolt of lightning illuminated the lounge at that moment, affording him a brief, almost eerie clarity as he took in her words. He felt something pluck at his heart. Maybe it was the resonance of her message, the sense that her presence here meant more than coincidence. Thank you, he whispered, and for once he let the gratitude fill his eyes. The storm raged late into the night. When the power finally returned, Miss Richards informed them that the kitchen was officially closed, but offered some leftover soup and bread in case they were hungry. Nathan and Evelyn accepted, and they ended up sitting at a small table near the kitchen, sharing a late meal in companionable silence. Afterwards, they parted ways with a promise to continue their conversation the next day. Yet that night, sleep evaded Nathan. He reread the single line Evelyn had written in his notebook. The phrase lingered on his lips as he finally drifted off, lulled by the storm outside. Morning arrived in soft rays, the storm having purified the air and left the world glistening with droplets. Nathan ventured downstairs to the dining area for coffee, a new bounce in his step. He wasn't sure if he expected to see Evelyn, but a quiet anticipation thrummed through him. Sure enough, she was there, near a window framed by lace curtains, reading a script with intense focus. Her burgundy coat lay on a nearby chair. At his approach, she glanced up, a bright smile parting her lips. Good morning, she greeted, setting the script aside. He nodded in greeting. Morning? Any news on the roads? She sighed. The roads have cleared, but our troop's bus is still in need of a minor repair. Something with the engine, so we might be stuck another day. He surprised himself by feeling relieved. That's unfortunate, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. But maybe it's an opportunity. Time for rest, or for more conversation. She looped a curl of auburn hair behind her ear. Absolutely. I was actually thinking of exploring the meadow behind the inn. Maybe do some character work. It's nice to practice lines in an open field sometimes. She hesitated, then extended an informal invitation. Would you like to come? Nathan blinked. Usually he avoided group outings or idle wandering. However, the memory of last night, her gentle words, the literal spark of lightning stirred a curiosity inside him. "I'd like that," he answered. They left the inn after breakfast, the sun beaming down through scattered clouds. The meadow behind Maplewood stretched wide and green, with wild flowers nodding their bright heads along the edges. A narrow footpath meandered through the grass toward the lake. Evelyn inhaled deeply, as if savoring the crisp atmosphere. For a moment, the only sounds were the rustle of leaves and distant bird song. Evelyn began reciting snippets of her lines from memory, letting her voice project into the open space. She paced back and forth, adopting different expressions and tones, clearly testing out variations in delivery. Nathan observed her, fascinated by how she seemed to summon an entire world with little more than her voice and posture. At one point, she spun to face him. "Would you mind reading the other part, just to give me someone to play off of?" He swallowed. "I'm not much of an actor." She thrust her script gently toward him. "You're a storyteller. That's enough." Reluctantly, he took the pages, glancing at the lines. They belonged to a drama set in a bygone era, two lovers exchanging meaningful words in hushed secrecy. He cleared his throat. "All right," he managed. "Let's give it a try." They launched into the scene. Evelyn's character was a traveler returning home with a confession, and Nathan's was a wounded soul torn between bittersweet longing and gratitude for her return. At first, he stumbled awkwardly, uncertain of what emotion to color his lines with, but the more he read, the more he slipped into the role, drawn in by Evelyn's intense performance opposite him. He felt the softness in her voice, the quiver in her breath, and something within him resonated. Their lines spoke of heartbreak, loss, and the courage to hope again. The words pressed against the dryness of Nathan's throat, making him feel profoundly vulnerable. For a moment, he forgot he was reading from a script. He was simply a man speaking directly to a woman who bore a secret that changed everything. And she, in turn, was gazing at him as though his acceptance or rejection determined her entire future. When the scene ended, quiet enveloped them. Evelyn let out a soft breath, some color in her cheeks. "That was quite good, actually," she said, her voice trembling just a bit. Nathan realized his heart was hardly steady. He handed back the pages, trying to steady his expression. "You have a way of drawing out emotion." She gave him a thoughtful smile. "And you have a depth that fuels those emotions. I could sense it in your tone. I think there's a lot stirring in your heart." He cleared his throat. "Maybe so. And maybe that's what's missing from my manuscript. I haven't allowed myself to feel deeply for a while." Evelyn reached out, placing her hand on his forearm, a gentle gesture that said she recognized his fragility. Then she looked around, as though searching for a shift in topic or a new inspiration. "About that story you're writing, can I hear more about it? Maybe talking it through will help." "Sure. Though I don't have much. I just know it's supposed to be about a man who's lost something crucial, his ability to believe in love, or maybe in people. Through a chance encounter, he imagines a new life, but is afraid to reach for it. I'm not sure if it ends happily or not." She murmured, "We all worry about the ending, don't we? But maybe that's not the point. Perhaps it's about having the courage to write the next scene, uncertain though it may be." It was such a fitting metaphor for both their lives that Nathan became momentarily speechless. The sunlight fell upon Evelyn's face as she looked up at him. Something in her gaze felt like an unspoken invitation. An invitation for connection, for trust, for possibility. They strolled the lake's perimeter, quiet for a time. Eventually, they found a wooden bench near the shoreline and sat. Tiny ripples shimmered across the water, reflecting cottony clouds overhead. Evelyn's demeanor slowly shifted. Her earlier buoyancy waned, replaced by a more pensive air. She turned to Nathan. "Last night you asked if I had any regrets. I said no." "That's not entirely true." He tilted his head, studying her expression. "You don't have to tell me. I want to, she said, determination creeping into her voice. There was someone who, well, let's just say I left him behind in my pursuit of the stage. We both were young, and I wanted so much more than he could give. Or maybe I was afraid I couldn't give him what he deserved. I told myself we'd reconnect someday, but years passed, and life carried me across countless stages, further and further away. He tried to stay in touch, but I drifted. Nathan listened quietly, feeling the weight of her confession. And you regret letting go. She looked out at the water, eyes tinted with sorrow. Only that I didn't do it with the honesty he deserved. I left him a letter that didn't say what I really meant to say. But that's the past. Maybe what's important is acknowledging that heartbreak shapes us as much as joy. Softly, everyday lake sounds accompanied the hush that passed between them. Nathan wondered, not for the first time, how many hidden pains people carry behind easy smiles. He thought of his own self imposed isolation, the months of telling himself that avoiding deeper connections was safer. Was it truly safer, or was it a kind of heartbreak all its own? He reached for her hand, placing his fingers through hers. She stiffened for an instant, then relaxed. The warmth of that simple touch carried a tentative promise. Maybe we both need to learn how to let go of certain fears and regrets, he said. She squeezed his hand gently. It's never too late to write a different ending, I suppose. In the interplay of sunlight and shadow, they found a subtle closeness that hinted at something unspoken between them, a tenderness that required no words. When they finally rose from the bench and made their way back to the inn, their steps felt lighter. As they approached Maplewood's weathered facade, Miss Richards was outside, chatting with a mechanic near an aged minibus. Evelyn's expression tensed slightly when she recognized the bus as her troops. By late afternoon, the mechanic confirmed that the vehicle was repaired enough to continue the trip. With a burst of movement, the traveling actors began to gather their belongings, check out of rooms, and prepare for the next leg of their journey. Evelyn, in the midst of the commotion, handed a crisp bill to Ms. Richards for her extended stay, then wandered toward one of the side porches, eyes distant with thought. Nathan found her standing there, hands clenched around the script as if uncertain. I guess this is goodbye, he said softly. She winced. I hate that word, but yes, for now. We have a show to perform tomorrow night in Windshire. Silence cloaked them both. Then Evelyn asked gently, Are you ready to move forward with your novel? Nathan blinked, turning her question over in his mind. I think so. I feel more hopeful about it. And about other things too. She handed him the script with a playful smile. Then I offer you this, a souvenir. If you ever need a reminder of our little performance in the meadow, or if you need lines to rehearse with a partner in the future. He took it carefully, struck by the personal nature of the gift. The script was dog-eared and filled with her notes, little scribbles indicating emotional cues. He breathed a thank you, then slid it into his notebook fold. Something to remember me by, she said, half in jest, but with genuine sentiment. And I'll remember you every time I open a new book, especially one of yours. I hope you find the ending that feels right. That's the real plot twist, isn't it? When ideas shift and hearts open, and you realize the story was always waiting to be told. With an impulsive grace, she rose on tiptoe and brushed a soft kiss upon his cheek. He felt heat radiate where her lips touched, and his heart drummed loudly in his chest. He returned a slight brush of his hand along her cheek, a gentle goodbye. Then the moment passed. The troupe called her name, and she went. Nathan stood on the porch watching as the once noisy but still familiar presence of Evelyn merged with the swirl of actors, luggage, and props. Eventually they drove away, the squeal of tires on wet asphalt carrying them into the distance. That evening, Maplewood Inn was quiet again. The storm had vanished, replaced by a tranquil dusk. Fireflies flickered along the meadow. Nathan took his dinner in the lounge as usual, but his gaze kept drifting to the place where Evelyn had sat the night before. He could almost imagine her there, an imprint of color and light, but there was no time for longing. Without waiting for second thoughts, he pulled out his notebook. On a fresh page, he scrawled words, letting them flow unimpeded. In a small town inn, a stranger found me and spoke the words my heart had forgotten. I learned that sometimes the story isn't just in the pen or the stage, but in the space between two souls willing to listen. He wrote late into the night, candlelight flickering across the pages, just as it had the previous evening. Something had softened within him, a space where hope had bloomed. The protagonist in his new story held a spark of optimism, someone who, even when faced with regrets, dared to embrace the next scene. Nathan wrote about a traveling actress who carried her own wounds, yet found solace in performing, leaving fragments of her heart in every town she visited. She was no mere cameo. She took center stage beside his solitary writer, forging an unexpected bond that neither saw. This thread wound itself through scene after scene, the pages filling with laughter, heartbreak, release, and renewal. As dawn approached, Nathan set down his pen. Exhaustion tugged at him, but he felt a satisfied contentment, a fullness he hadn't experienced in months. He closed the notebook, pressing a hand to its cover as though bestowing a silent blessing upon the words inside. Days passed. Nathan stayed on at Maplewood Inn, continuing to weave his new novel. He even ventured to Windshire one evening, half hoping to catch Evelyn's show. But though he was told the group had arrived, the performance times eluded him, or every time he tried, something else demanded his presence. Eventually, the touring theater might have moved on to the next location, and yet her influence stayed with him. Each day, he walked the meadow, reciting lines from the script she'd given him, imagining her enthusiastic corrections. That confidence sparkled in his writing, as though she stood at his side, urging him deeper into the story's emotional core. His reclusive habits still lingered, but they carried less weight. He ventured into the inn's communal spaces more often, chatting briefly with other travelers, gleaning bits of conversation to fold into his writing. Weeks later, in the glow of a late summer afternoon, he signed a contract with his publisher for the new manuscript. A romantic drama about two souls, one tethered to the road, the other to the page, who shared a moment at a small town inn that changed them forever. He emailed a draft to his editor, reflecting on all that had happened since that fateful stormy evening. He had no way of knowing if Evelyn would read it someday, or if she would find her own resolution to the regrets she'd carried. But he felt that in some intangible manner, their stories had merged, forming a shared chapter in both of their lives. Nathan lingered on the porch, the one where she'd said goodbye, gazing out at the rustling meadow. A gentle breeze ruffled his hair and turned the pages of the script she had given him, which he now kept tucked inside his notebook. The last page featured her pencil sketches of stage positions, each one a testament to her devotion to the craft. He closed his eyes, allowing himself to imagine her final lines once more. I leave so much behind to follow the stage, but perhaps I will return one day, if the heart still beckons. He opened his eyes and set the script back into his folder, hopeful. Maybe they would meet again, or maybe the story of their encounter was complete. Either way, he found himself unafraid, ready for whatever the next chapter might bring. He turned away and headed inside, the golden light catching in the glass door as he moved. With every step, he felt the words coming alive in his heart, a gentle plot twist, an unexpected opening, a swell of possibility that only the human soul could conjure. Life was, after all, the stage on which the most meaningful stories are performed, and sometimes you only need a single night of thunder and candlelight to realize you are part of one too.